Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this evening I am joined by Kev McCluskey. We are here to cover the Celts at the Euros. Kev McCluskey couldn't have got off to a worse start. It's half-time, Germany 3, Scotland 0. Scotland down to 10 men. That was horrific in the first 45, wasn't it? Really poor.
It was. The only saving grace for you and me is that we're not coming in after a Celtic performance like that after the first 45 minutes. Because I don't think we could face doing a half-time show if that was the case. We sat through some dreadful first halves, or poor first halves, shall we say, this season with Celtic. But this is taking the biscuit, taking it to a total different level. It's been, like Alistair S says there, it's just been depressing. It's been woeful from Scotland. I don't know what the game plan was, if they've got one, because they've sat so deep, but just giving the Germans loads and loads of time on the ball. There's no press. For the amount of players that Scotland's got back in defence, Germany's always got a man over. They've just been picking us off at will, and yeah, 3-0, deservedly so. And it's going to be damage limitation. I hope the Germans are going to be kind to us in the second half and we can keep it down to something semi-respectable.
Well, if you go in at 3-0, Kev, 11v11, you're maybe thinking that. But obviously that final decision, which absolutely was the right decision. I mean, it was a dangerous tackle.
Oh, yeah. It's a horrible tackle.
He was not in control of what was going to happen because he was off the ground, both feet, studs up, catches the German player at a really, a dangerous part of the shin area. If your leg's planted, you're snapping the boy's leg. Terrible tackle, absolutely shocking. And I know that some of them will go through the motions. Andy Robertson will go through the motions with the ref because he has to, because it's his role and he's the captain. But that was a horrible tackle. You say keeping it respectable. I think in the first half prior to the game, Tony Cassidy predicted 4-0. 3-0 so far, says Tony. Can't play football like that. Defending all the time. Better to attack from the off than get horsed 5-0 and boring the world to death defending. We go back to, opening games of tournaments in the past. I remember us, obviously, the famous one in the World Cup was against Brazil. And they beat us 2-1. John Collins scored a penalty kick. We scored an own goal. Unfortunately, it was another ex-Celt and Tom Boyd that scored the own goal. But you're up against a team that got through to the final, had Ronaldo not had his health issues and fitness issues. It might have been different, but that was an amazing France team that beat them. But you're playing one of the best teams in the world and you're competing. What I've seen tonight, Kevin, is it was almost as if we were playing with 10 men for the entirety of the first half. We were not anywhere near that level.
Never, nowhere near it, no. I remember that game against Brazil. I remember it quite well, and we gave them a game. We came out and we tried to play football in that game. I think we tried to attack. We tried to take the game to Brazil, like the best side in the world at that time, as much as we could. Tonight we've just sat back and there's been no ambition from the first minute we got the ball, and it was coming mainly into that left back area for us. And Robertson, of all players, he's just launching it long, and it's going up to Shea Adams, who's, I don't know, what, 5'8", 9". He's not a big guy, and he's up against Rudiger and Ta, who are both 6 foot plus, and he's not even at the halfway line. We're so far deep that our furthest forward player is still like 5 yards inside our half. So as soon as that ball gets won, it's returned, it's right back on top of us. And we've just invited it right from the very beginning. And, I hate to say it because it's Scotland and I'd obviously like to see them do well and I'd like to see them have a go and try and take the game to Germany. But the way they're playing, they absolutely deserve to get the hammering that they're getting because they're asking for it. They're doing nothing to prevent it. There doesn't seem to be a game plan. We've got some good midfielders. Callum McGregor, Scott McTominay, John McGinn, all can put their foot in the ball and do something. And we've totally bypassed them right from the first kickoff. So yeah, that's such a hard watch, but completely self-inflicted. Maybe if we had a go, you'd open yourself up a wee bit more to a good Germany team to come and attack and exploit you. But like Tony says, there's games where if there's a very good chance you're going to lose anyway, you might as well go down fighting and giving it a go and taking the game to your opponent, and you might just nick something from it. But we've totally blown it in that first 45 minutes. We've blown it by the 20-minute mark, never mind the halftime whistle.
We've seen it in the past, Kevin. We've seen teams that, even that famous game we were talking about where Scotland went toe to toe with one of the world's finest and gave them a game at least, And we've seen it in the past. You and I covered the Real Madrid game where they beat us 3-0 at Celtic Park. Mm-hmm. The 2-1 game famously against Barcelona. You can play teams that are technically far superior to you, but if you've got a game plan, then you can eliminate a lot of the threats. We've not even looked as though we've had a game plan. I think that's a disappointment because, like you say, on an individual basis, we do have quality in the side. We said before the game there are major weaknesses in the Scotland team. They've been absolutely there for everybody to see. They've been highlighted. We've had nothing up top, nothing, non-existent in terms of a threat up top. And when a ball comes into the central defensive area, we're weak. We're so weak. But even some of the big players that have won European Cups for Liverpool, like Robertson, he's had a horror of a game as well, horrific. And to the point where some of the crossfield balls have been targeting him rather than targeting Tony Ralston on the right-hand side because he's not been able to manage the threat. So it's going to be a long second half for Stevie Clarke. Anybody else of a Scottish persuasion, Tony Cassidy has managed somehow to find a glimmer of positivity from that 45 minutes. The Bricky has done okay. You know me, Tony. When it comes to Tony Ralston, I'm always going to say he's done all right. But there was a few occasions where he got the ball, Kevin, there was nothing on. Where he's had to turn back, he's had to play the simple 10-yard pass because he's looking into the quality area of the park with John McGinn and McTominay and McGregor, and there's nothing on. I think Christie's been particularly poor in the first half in the midfield, and there's a lot of people saying in the comments Billy Gilmour probably should have started. My biggest disappointment coming into this tournament was the injury to Ben Doak. But you're sitting at half-time against Germany 3-0 down to 10 men. I would be reluctant to, if he was fit, throw him on because you don't want to damage his career in any way, shape or form. This could end up to be an absolute mauling, Kev. You're the manager of Scotland right now against a top class side who have already managed to pick you apart at ease in the first half against 11 men. You're down to 10. What do you do? Over to you, Kev. Over to you.
You light a few candles and you say a couple of Hail Marys and you hope for the best.
That old Tommy Burns one, right. Where's the trapdoor? Aye.
That old one. Yes, that's about the best you can do. For anyone wanting Billy Gilmour, I would ask you to explain, or not in a nasty way, but like, tell me why. What would he have done in that game that would be any different than Christie? Because I don't think it matters who's in the midfield at the moment. The tactics, the way we've set up, we've got it to play the game. We've just bypassed the midfield anyway. So I think Gilmour's a really talented player, but we're not giving the midfield the ball. So it doesn't matter who's there. It would be kind of a wasted jersey because we've just bypassed it. We need to. I don't know what we need to do because I'm thinking we need to change shape. But do we go 4-4-1 maybe, and try and get a little bit of width in there, solidify a bit in the middle? You're saying Doak is a player that could have made an impact in a game like this. I think he probably could have if we'd had him in the squad and in from the start. But I think the one we're missing most, and you'll enjoy this one, is Lyndon Dykes. I think if you'd had him up top, but a physical presence, those long, hopeful punts forward would be at least finding tall, physical player who's going to give their backline a wee bit of an issue. He'd have won more balls than Adams. He'd have been able to hold it up and maybe bring someone into the game. Because we don't have that outlet, we need to change the way we're playing. We need to change the setup. This 3-4-2-1 or 5-3-1-1, whatever it is Clarke wants to call it today, it's really not worked. It hasn't worked from the very beginning. It should have been changed probably before it even got to 2-0. You just change something about, play a really simple style of football at the moment just to get a wee bit confidence in game back. But for the second half, it's going to be really, really tough. I don't really see. We're not obviously not going to turn it around and get anything out of the game.
No.
Our getting something now is just it's not
damage
losing the
limitation.
second half by 3 goals. Yeah.
Damage limitation. The thing that you say is right, and I do think Gilmour's an excellent player, but it's been about getting the ball, to hold up the ball and look for space and create something. It's a little bit like Dykes. If Dykes is up top, there's one ball I remember that he might have done better with, but even if he had won it, there's nobody up there with him. So so it gets to the point where there's no width, for example. So we're creating nothing. Have Scotland had a corner kick in the first half? I don't think we have. So we're creating absolutely nothing. We're not putting them under any kind of pressure. Every time a German has the ball, he's got options and time on the ball. Every time a Scotland player gets the ball, he's smoked out. And he's having, like the Ralston example that I gave, he's having to get rid of the ball, 10-yard safe pass, just to try and keep possession. Because if he turns round, he's faced with 2 or 3 German players. It's one of these ones, we cover the Celtic games twice a week, often. And at halftime, when things aren't great, Kevin, you can confidently say, I think we should do X, Y, and Z. But we're so bad in that first half. And, Germany, let's be fair, they're so good. It's difficult to give any kind of a suggestion. It's really just damage limitation, if that means, because even if you were to put on more of a defensive-minded player, they're good enough to break them down. So it doesn't really matter if you're going to do that. And obviously, we're up against a real issue with the fact that Poaches, who, to be honest with you, I think I've never really regarded him at the top level of Scottish football, never mind international football. He got his move away for Hibs. We covered it at the time. Is he a player Celtic should have considered? He's too rash. He is. He's a mistake waiting to happen. We focused on Jack Hendry before the game because of his ex-Celtic credentials. But Poaches was a red flag for me. He's always been a red flag. He was one of these guys who seemed to have a red card in him in Scottish football. He's gone down south. You hope that he can learn. And this is the biggest stage of his football career. And he trudges off. And it's in tatters, not only his tournament, but Scotland's now. Because going back to something Jim Orr said in the bulletin at 12:30 today, it could go down to how much of a tank can you take. Because you can go and get a decent result in other 2 games, Kev. But Germany are likely to win all their games and put everybody to the sword, right? Because they'll be looking at all 3 opponents thinking they can. So do you get beat 2-0 or 5-0? And that could be the difference between progressing or not. And as we're sitting here at the moment, 3-0 down to 10 men, Tony Cassidy's new prediction of 5-0 is probably the kindest we could hope for, Kev.
Yeah, I think it is. I think Tony's right with that. And it could very well come down to by how much we lose this game, as to whether we stand a chance to progress. Because we know that 3rd place could be up for grabs as our best 3rd place qualifier. But we need to take 4 points from the next 2 games, which on paper, regardless of how this game goes, we're capable of doing it. But we'll only sneak those games by 1 goal. Oh, excuse me. We'll get a draw and we'll get a 1-goal win, so we'll have a minus goal difference coming into the group stage, and that's probably not going to be enough to see us through. 1 second, I'm going to go and wait for a minute.
Well, you're doing that. I'll bring in Stephen Ray, who says terrible setup by Clark. Gilmour should have been on instead of Christie, who struggles to hold on to the ball. He absolutely did struggle to hold on to the ball, and he almost gave away a penalty kick in the first half as well, Stephen. Ryan Christie's a player that I've always rated. I liked him when he was at Celtic. I was disappointed that we didn't see more of him under Ange. He left pretty swiftly when Ange came in. The decision had been made. The wheels were in motion. There was nothing Ange could do or even wanted to do. But he's making his 50th appearance tonight, and he's been ineffective, Stephen. It would not surprise me if he was one of the players to get hooked at half-time. Paul just says we're not good enough. Tactics immaterial. I think sitting at half-time, Kev, if we had set this up as a Partick Thistle state of mind 7 years ago, you would have had far more half-time bulletins like this where you're clutching at straws as to how are we going to get back into it. Thank God we don't have to do this all that often when we're doing the Acsom half-time bulletins, I'll tell you that, because it's tough. It must be tough to be one of the wee minion teams. It must be. That's what I'm taking from it.
We'll take the silver lining of that. I mean, we did a few tough half times this season when we were going in at 0-0, in games when we're not turning up. But our not turning up throughout the season was a hell of a lot better than what we've just witnessed there. That was dreadful. But just before we go back to the game, before I had my coughing fit there, I was going to say about Porteous and him being one of those Scottish players that we often get linked with, and we get the criticism that we don't go for them and we overlook the talent in the game. Now, Porteous had loads of red flags, and most of them were actually red cards. You know, he always had that in him. He had the daft little arm that would go up and concede a penalty or a push in the back. He's not got the mentality to be a Celtic player. Somebody like a John McGinn, we saw when he was 19, 20, 21 years old, he had it, and we should have went for him. Same with James McCarthy at the beginning of his career at Hamilton. There has been players that we've missed that we will regret. I don't think we'll ever regret not signing Porteous. He's not got it. Um, and he's ruined his own tournament. That's him. He's probably not going to play another game in a major tournament for Scotland, and he's put us majorly in the back foot in this game. And aye, silly boy, because there's no need for him to do what he's done.
No, he has to make a tackle, but he doesn't have to make that tackle. Rash to the extreme. I liked the chat before we get back in the second half. Stevie Clark gave about positivity and how we're a dour country and all this stuff. I absolutely agreed with him. I'm a very positive I have a positive outlook on life generally, Kev, but I'm finding it difficult to clutch onto any positivity for this second half. Well, I have got to say,
I will positively tell you that Scotland will not win this game. There, that's the level of positivity.
Will you join me at full time, though? Will you join me at full time? Am I going to have to run with that one myself? You're a good man. Right, join us at full time. We will be here no matter what happens. Let's just hope no injuries to Celtic players. And bring some guys on. Bring them on, give them their first game, get some minutes into their legs for the second game of the tournament. Because for me, that was one of the worst first halves of football I've ever spoken about on this channel. In fact, the worst. Right, let's get back to the action. Last thing for me to say, Kevin McCluskey, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.